Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first and the debut of Live Your Jam podcast. I am your host, Ellen McGinnis. And obviously, this is our first episode, and it's all about introductions. I'm going to introduce you to what Live Your Jam is all about and what you can look forward to and expect here on this podcast. And I'm going to introduce you to myself and tell you a little bit about my story. I'm really excited that you're all here and listening, and that I get to share Live Your Jam and my desire and passion to help as many people as I can. So, to begin, I thought I would tell you what Live Your Jam is all about, specifically what it means to me. And Live Your Jam is about living a life from the inside out. I believe that we all have souls, and our soul holds the key to what makes us each unique and how we share our uniqueness with the world in ways, always big and small. And we're each here for our own reason. And with every sincere step that we take, whether it's through joy, through relationships, through grief, healing, intuition, or silence, it's a step towards living in concert with those reasons that our soul is here. So I want to be clear about one thing, just make a distinction that living your jam is a journey. It's not a destination. It's not like we all go out and seek our jam. I think that there's ways that we can integrate and create a life that is integrated with our jam and our reasons that our soul is here and following those threads. So it's not to go seek out and end up somewhere. It's really about living in a way from the inside out. And we all know that being a soul in human form is challenging. The human experience is challenging. It's also very joyful, but we live this human existence with all of its societal constructs and in many ways like made up limitations. For example, the simple one and kind of a meta big level is that modern society focuses on what we achieve or consume externally rather than the richness that lies within each of us. Many traditions focus on that, but externally, that's not what our society focuses on. So I want to just be clear in that what you're going to hear on this podcast are stories from people and really methods and tools to help you follow your inner wisdom and go on the journey yourself and integrate it into your everyday life. So what can you expect on the Live Your Jam podcast? So I will share stories of people who have listened to their inner wisdom and defied convention and made changes in their life that are really a reflection of what is inside of them and aligned that with their external reality. These stories are inspirational, and you'll also hear from many people that there is no real finish line. The listening continues even after we make big changes in life, as we keep growing our connection to our soul. And, even if you don't like the term soul, that's fine. You can just think of it as we keep just growing as humans. The more we know, the better we do, right? And not all guests will have made huge transformational changes. Some will make changes in small ways, and we'll also have experts in certain areas that I think are really important to doing soul work and to this business of listening to your inner wisdom. So we'll have people speak on kind of different areas of expertise, around mindfulness and astrology. And I'm going to leave some surprises there, but I've got some really nice guests lined up. And sometimes it'll just be me talking and sharing the tools and resources that I've used myself. I've made some really big life transitions and navigated some choppy waters. And I know what it feels like intimately to build the bridge between your ego and your soul. And so I will lovingly share the keys to living a life from the inside out with you. I have attuned to my own soul and my own rhythm, and I can help others do the same. And I'm incredibly passionate about it. And these tools and things that I've used, they're not made up. They're actually things you can do to listen to your own inner wisdom and deepen your connection to your soul. And they've been life-changing for me and for my clients as well. And that's probably a good segue to talk a little bit about me and the work that I've done. So I've been having meaningful conversations with people for at least 20 years. I do it for a living. I work with leaders figuring out what matters to them and help them create from a place of clarity. In addition, over the years, you can imagine many friends come to me and ask me for help or an approach to speak to somebody they love who needs help getting clear. And I am no stranger to that myself. I created Live Your Jam in 2018, but it's really been a whisper inside of me since I was a little girl. I didn't know that over and over again I would have to turn inward to navigate what I was being called to next. I've changed careers 3 times. This is kind of a slight pivot because I've been in this area for 20 years. And I'll talk more about how this kind of comes up with my clients all the time. But I was married for 18 years and divorced without blowing things up and able to move on peacefully from that. I'm blessed to be a mom. And I've reimagined that role, something that I will talk about on the show. But I now live 800 miles away from my 2 teenage sons. And that's quite unconventional and is kind of steeped in this inner wisdom piece. Since I was 30, I won't say exactly, I'm in my mid to late 50s. Now I've moved, I think, 15 times to 4 different US states and then 2 different countries, United States and Europe. And I'm an expert at navigating transitions and helping people and myself to get clear and building the life they want for themselves from the inside out. So I thought it'd be interesting for me to tell you a little bit about the way I think about things and kind of how Live Your Jam came to be, because it did have a little bit of a different form where years ago I would say that it was just the intersection between passion and skills, passion and purpose. But I always knew that that was limiting, but I kind of just stayed with it and watched how it emerged in my own life and what resonated for me. But I think a big part of the way I look at things is through systems theory. I think one of the biggest shifts in my life was when I studied in graduate school psychology, kind of systems theory, and I've studied a lot of personality theory as well. But systems theory was really a powerful lens for me for understanding, at the time, organizations, but it really kind of translated into human systems thinking too. And I don't want to bore you with all this, but I do want to tell you that one of the powerful lens about systems theory is that it's understanding that everything's connected and interconnected, not just these isolated parts. So in an organization or any system, it'd be helping leaders and change agents see the patterns and relationships and feedback loops, or rather as, more patterns and interconnected than just symptoms. And one of the basic constructs or ideas around systems theory is that if you only fix the part, you may break the whole. So if you shift the whole, the parts will realign. And I see us as humans as the same example of that. It really kind of gives us the language for merging kind of science and spirituality, what they've long taught, that everything is interconnected and that balance matters and that wholeness is sacred. So Live Your Jam is about this integration of the soul and all the parts of us in the human experience, as opposed to, kind of this thinking around materialism, which is only things that have matter exist, right? And energy is matter. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But what this requires is a little bit more of an open mind and an idea of thinking like it's all created, it's all interconnected with nature, with all of us are, and how it's really, really important to see that interconnection and your role in everything that you do for yourself and make better for yourself. It has an impact and a resonance in everything. So we hear this all the time, but people who are happy on the inside really take their talents and share them with people on the outside. That's an expression of Live Your Jam. So I really wanted to just talk about systems theory and how I always see things interconnected. So I see the people that are doing the work of kind of the integration and really building the connection from the mind, the human experience to the soul. And, that kind of has the recipe for, our reason for being here, or really kind of what lights us up. people who do that work then take it out to the world, and it makes the world a better place. So it's super important to kind of the core of this work. It's an inside out, but it's also an individual to the collective and the interconnectedness of the interconnected. And there's lots of traditions that talk about this and build on this. But it's this idea that the inward journey is going to have external rewards because of the interconnection that we all share. There's one other piece that I want to talk to you about this, and I've really had to work on it myself. So the thing that I've had to work on myself, and this is building, I'm keeping this rather high level, but this is building on kind of what I've had to learn here, and which I really think is a fundamental concept in this inward journey and interconnectedness and the kind of the systems thinking, is that if we're all interconnected, then our thoughts, the way we behave, it all matters. And that's difficult. One of the things I've been working on recently, I try to look at people as souls. I know, and it's not a bypass. It doesn't mean that I don't get annoyed. It doesn't mean that I don't have thoughts that clearly I don't speak out loud, because that would not be good. I have them. I just have less of them. And it's as a result of doing this work. So for example, when you get on an airplane and you sit down and then the person behind you needs to get up and then they pull back on your chair, you get into this kind of reverberation, kind of slinged back and forth. Well, that's happened quite a few times, and lately it happened and the person kept doing it. And the thought that comes up in my head isn't necessarily a nice one. But what I really try to do is just look at it from soul to soul. They're not, it's just two souls trying to get by, instead of going into this mental chatter of, what a jerk. Don't they know? Can't they see me slinging back and forth? I don't try to judge myself for those thoughts. They're very human. But when I shift my perspective on the interconnectedness, that we're both two souls here together, and it really doesn't matter about the slinging back and forth. In this particular example, it doesn't really matter. It's uncomfortable for me. And instead of going down that negative line of thinking, I can almost do a blessing from a soul to soul level. And that really helps with annoyances and some of the negative talk. It also helps if I go to this interconnected piece. Everything, thoughts have energy. And I'm going to have an episode just dedicated to energy. And I already talked about materialism. And again, this podcast won't be too sciencey, but there are some pieces that I think overlap nicely and can be easily explained for people. So I'm just going to start that there and go back to my example in the plane with the annoying person who's, moving my chair back and forth, my seat back and forth. I do, on a soul to soul level, just kind of acknowledge that we're both navigating this experience. And it really does prevent me from going down the negative path of all the reasons why they're a jerk and maybe they should exercise, whatever it is. It's not pretty. And it really kind of helps me reconnect to myself. I think that also sends out an energetic vibration that's higher and more, well, certainly more loving, and not participating in negative energy. And this is kind of, the big crescendo here. One act of hatred is an act of hatred for all. So I cannot wish harm on someone and not have it reverberate energetically. So that is very difficult to do, but that reminds me, there's a lot going on in politics right now, a lot that I don't particularly care for. And I really try not to get into the mindset and into the human thinking of hate and want harm on somebody, because I recognize I can't hate the war in Israel and Gaza and what's happening to the children in Gaza and then want it for somewhere else because I feel justified in it. So that is a really good example of systems thinking, and it's a really good example of kind of one of the foundations of Live Your Jam. It's a higher elevated way, and it's not a superior way because it takes work, but it takes us out of this kind of just human part and kind of looks at things from a soul perspective and an integrated perspective. The same as with nature, right? When you recognize how beautiful it is and it's a part of us and the biology, and there's lots of mirrors there. You don't really want to litter, right? It's not really okay. So it can change our behavior and make us more expansive. So I want to just say that there's a little bit of a systems approach that I try in this. There's a little bit of it's ironic, right? Because Living Your Gem is from the inside out. I'm listening to the inside of myself to create my external life in alignment with that. But also knowing that inner work that I do on myself, it can have a real positive impact in the world. And I think we all know this intuitively, but it's really kind of what I wanted to share with you on some of the principles here. Okay, another thing is I talk about intuition a lot, and I think we all kind of know what it is, but I am going to try to define it. If we're going to go with I'm going to use kind of a systems integrated approach here. So I think the human experience is what I've said here is like it's the soul, our heart, it plays a big role in it. And sometimes people talk about intuition coming from the heart. And then also our mind, our thinking mind, where our kind of ego resides, right? Those three, if we're thinking like of what the experience is to be human, it's our mind, it's our heart, and then it's the soul piece. And so intuition, I think, is we need to think of those three together in like a 3-part kind of symphony, if you will. I like this kind of metaphor of a symphony. Like the soul is the composer. It's our external consciousness. It holds our deepest truth, our purpose, our alignment. It exists beyond the physical body. We all know this. If you've seen somebody pass I was raised in the Catholic tradition, so there's a wake there and you see the person, the body's there, but it's not the person. You know that. Their soul isn't there anymore. It's not just that they're not alive. It's like that's the body and it's something different. So the soul exists beyond the physical body, but it's connected to your life through your energetic field. And we get pure knowings from the soul. There's times we just know things, and it's almost a vibration before it is an actual thought, so think of the soul that way, as really the composer of all of this experience. And the heart is the receiver. It's both the physical heart and the energetic heart, which is also known as the heart chakra. We have energetic centers in our body as well. And the heart acts like an antenna, and it catches the soul's transmissions. So I heard people say intuition is the language of the soul and the heart is the receiver. And science supports the heart because it has its own neural network, its own heart brain, right? That communicates with the brain and the heart. Like, we can have an emotion and thought, and that can create an emotion, and we can feel it in our heart, like love, right? We see somebody and there's a whole biological, neurological function going on there. So the heart can convert the soul's vibration into something that we can feel. Like I just said, a sensation, an emotion, or certainty. And the mind interprets this. It organizes, it puts words and plans and actions to how we felt. And it serves the process beautifully, or it can hijack it with fear or doubt or overthinking. And that's when we're talking about trusting your intuition. Oftentimes, I'm going to give you many stories of things that I knew in my life to be true for me, but I would then overthink it. And the mind works best when it's in service to the soul and the heart, not when it's in charge of them, right? And we all know this too. And I always get a little bit nervous when I see people who are so sure about things sometimes, because when you can tell when the ego's in charge or the mind is in charge, and there's not the integration piece. And so I just want to say the mind does a good job of serving the soul and the heart. And when it's fully in charge, that's a disembodied piece. And so the three are very, very important in terms of understanding intuition. The soul is the composer, the heart is the receiver, and then the mind is the interpreter. So I think that's a healthy framework, and the one that I kind of use to look at this. Sometimes it doesn't really matter because the words get interchangeable, soul, intuition, but I do know people who like to be exact, and I think this is a really helpful metaphor, is that it's a 3-part symphony, and we need all 3 of those. And Live Your Jam, again, is talking about the integration of all of them, listening from the inside, what the soul is composing for us, using the heart to receive and then the mind to interpret, versus this maybe societal way is the mind is everything, right? And it is the external is what we know is true. And that's not really the case. So I wanted to talk about that as a framework too for Live Your Jam and kind of what this kind of builds on as well. That's really what I wanted to share on the foundation of Live Your Jam, kind of the construct that it's working within my view and what I'm trying to create here. And so we'll have conversations on this podcast on how energy works, which is really, really fascinating. We'll have conversations on the tools around mindfulness and really examining your thoughts. Because again, if the mind is the interpreter, it can interpret what we know in a way that doesn't serve us. So working on our thoughts is critical, and it's a foundational piece to this work of living from the inside out. Also, nature is going to be a big part of it, and health is a part of it. I'm not a health expert by any means, but I have learned over time how exercise and diet can help keep this vessel, the body, clear to help do this work. I'm also going to teach meditation techniques. Don't roll your eyes. I have so many clients who are like, I can't meditate. I was one of those people too. I do not sit and do meditation for hours on end, but I do daily practices that are super purposeful and super helpful in my life. So I'm going to show you pieces on meditation. I'm going to show you some things to do in nature because it's a grounding source. There's other ways we can ground ourselves, but that's going to be a part of it as well. And then there's tools I already kind of mentioned at the high level. Astrology, don't roll your eyes, please. I have a lot of people who poo-poo astrology based just on the daily horoscopes that they read, which don't really think is a good representation of astrology. But I'm going to talk to you about how it's an energy map and how it's very useful. And there's archetypes built in there. And we're going to talk about some other archetypes, like there's some universal principles. So I thought it would just be a good way to end to tell you my own story with Live Your Jam. I mentioned earlier that as a little girl, it was something inside me. And so I've had this inner knowing, this nudge since, I don't want to say since I can remember. It feels like since I was like 9 years old, the nudge inside me, the whisper was that I was going to help people. I did it initially by going out and visiting all the neighbors' dogs within a 3-mile radius. I just would go out and visit everybody's dog and pet them and feed them. I had a real strong connection to animals when I was younger. And then later on, it morphed into I was going to take people to lunch and make them feel better. So I share this as it is very sweet, that the little girl in me kind of had these ideas. But when I look back, it's the same thread. It's the same feeling. How I tried to take it into form differed. And in the little girl ways, very sweet ways, right? With the dogs and the visiting and the taking people to lunch. It's been inside me and throughout, and it's changed and morphed. And then I went into this field of helping others, really from a systems standpoint and helping people in corporations. But at the end of the day, the work really then became working with leaders. And then I started coaching them, and then I started helping people that way. So I was consulting in organizations, helping that way. And then that people would be like, well, could you work with me one-on-one? And then I became trained in coaching and then all of that kind of stuff. And so that became a part of my practice as well. And then from the coaching work, what really came out was I would have these people who were hugely successful would be like, is this it? And then in my own life, I was having feelings of not necessarily is this it, but is what I'm creating matching what I'm feeling inside? And in some ways, the answer was no. And those are very difficult things to reconcile, but I just kept going and did a lot of the work. And so from that, in 2018, Live Your Jam came out. Like I said, it was the intersection of passion and skills. And I kind of knew there was an inherent problem with that, right? Because it's like, then people have to find their skills and they have to figure out what they're passionate about. And that's not really it. That makes it seem like more work for people and it didn't really resonate, but it was like a safe parking lot, if you will, for me to leave Jam. And in some ways, Jam was just like, do what makes you happy, right? And I think that's a big part of it, but it can, but what I'm saying is a little bit deeper thing now, which is like, it's the connection between the soul, the heart, and the mind. And if the soul is trying to tell us things, how do we drown out the noise and listen and create from there? And by the way, what the soul tells you isn't always, it's not like go buy a car, or it's not always this formed thing. It is follow this thread. It is be still and the answer will come. Or you need to change your role. This no longer serves you. Okay, well, that's hard, right? The role of, in my case, motherhood, like, I don't really want to do that, right? So I can just share with you that Live Your Jam has, throughout my entire life, has been a thread that I continue to follow to do this work. And some major changes in my life, like moving over to Europe and getting there and having my marriage start to really have some challenges. And I was, 6,000 miles away from my best friends, 6,000 miles away from a support system. I was in an expat community, and I really had to take a lot of the things that I talk about: mindfulness, meditation, subconscious belief patterns, which I'll have an episode on. I had to do all of this work on my own. I did have help with a therapist. I mean, but we'll talk about support systems for periods of it, but there was periods of it where that wasn't needed for me. It just wasn't the choice, but I did have a therapist throughout. But a lot of it I did through my own practices and my own observations, and it was instrumental. So I'm going to share that approach with you because I have been able to condense it down. And I can honestly say I'm still on this journey. There's one thing about living your jam is it's not like, oh gosh, I did it all and I'm done and I'm so great. That's really not the goal. The goal is to be with all of you and you with me, and then to talk to people and follow techniques that actually work. I will tell you that this work is incredibly rewarding. I'm able to watch my emotions come and go now. It doesn't mean that I don't get upset, but I can tell you the level of peace and joy that I have in terms of using these tools and feeling aligned to myself is quite good. And I can still tell you, I don't know. I'm a not knower. I'm not sure. And peace isn't a 24/7 thing by any means, but the rewards of living this life, of really trying to listen to what your soul wants and to receive it through the heart and interpret it through the mind, is a much better, it's just a beautiful approach. So I hope this interests you, and I hope that we all know that there's no one way, but there will be things on this channel that I hope, in this podcast, that are incredibly helpful, insightful, and make you feel loved and make you have the courage to walk your own path and have the courage to really follow your jam. So, we're not here to force a place in this life. We're here to remember who we are, and the soul's path is inward, not outward. But we have this human form that has to take it outward, right? So I welcome you on this journey, and I thank you all for being here. And I look forward to the next episode, which I want to tell you about. We're going to have a success to significance story. So I have a very senior leader who was super high up at General Electric, who's traveled 80 countries, worked in many of them, speaks multiple languages, is a kind of an elite athlete. He's just an amazing human being who has done a lot in his life and was kind of like, I want to do something else now. And so he did the work and kind of changed his life in a different direction and left corporate. It's a very inspirational story. He's a wonderful human being and a really good guy, good leader in every sense of his life. So I'm thrilled to have him on here, and I'll introduce him for our second episode. But that is a success to significance story. A lot of the people I have on, I coach and work with and have worked with, get to this place in life where they're like, yeah, I've achieved a lot and I'm looking for more meetings. So I call that group my success to significance group. So we're going to have somebody speak from that perspective, and you'll get to hear his story and learn his path. So I look forward to that. And I thank you all for being with me on this first episode. That's it. Live your jam.